Ever feel like technology is just sprinting ahead and you're sort of scrambling to keep up? Just trying to figure out what's really going on.
Oh, God.
You hear about AI doing all this amazing stuff, and then you're thinking, okay, wait, what does that actually mean for me, for my job? It's a lot.
It absolutely is. And that feeling, wanting a quick way to really grasp what's happening right at the edge, that's exactly why we're here today.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take a real deep dive into something huge in the tech world,
Mm-hmm.
how artificial intelligence is profoundly changing software development.
That's right. We're focusing specifically on tools you might heard of, like GitHub Copilot, maybe ChatGPT, and how they're actually reshaping the day-to-day for coders. It
Yeah.
feels like a pretty seismic shift. And it brings us straight to the core question for this whole discussion. Can AI really replace human coders? Or is it more like a partner?
That's the tension. Right.
Exactly. That's what we want to unpack.
So our mission today is to really look closely at the strengths and, the weaknesses of both these AI coding tools and human software engineers.
Okay.
We'll compare them on stuff like creativity, how accurate they are, debugging really tricky problems, scalability, understanding what users actually need, and, adaptability.
Right.
The goal is to figure out, are AI coders going to take over, or are we looking at more of a team-up, a symbiotic relationship?
Okay, let's get into it. Starting with maybe the most talked about example right now, GitHub Copilot. For anyone who's maybe just heard the name, what is it, basically?
Okay, so GitHub Copilot is essentially an AI coding assistant. It came out of this collaboration between GitHub and OpenAI.
OpenAI.
Think of it like autocomplete on steroids. Instead of just suggesting the next word, it suggests whole lines, sometimes entire blocks of code.
Wow. Okay, that sounds incredibly useful, but how does it actually do that? What's going on under the hood?
Well, at its heart, Copilot runs on OpenAI's Codex model. That's a version of their GPT 3.5 and GPT 4 models. But it's been specifically fine-tuned just for programming.
Fine-tuned how?
It was trained on just a massive, massive amount of public code.
Yeah.
We're talking GitHub repositories, answers on Stack Overflow, countless open source projects, just tons of data.
Okay.
So when you're coding, maybe you write a comment describing what you want, or you just start typing a function. Copilot uses all that learned knowledge to predict and suggest code right there in your editor, like VS Code.
So it's learned the patterns from millions, billions of lines of code.
Pretty much, yeah. It's learned the common ways people write code, the conventions.
Okay, that's huge. So what are AI's biggest advantages here? Its superpowers in coding, where does it really shine?
Speed is a huge one. Its ability to generate code snippets almost instantly is really impressive. It cuts down dramatically on writing boilerplate code, the repetitive stuff.
Right, the setup code you always have to write.
Exactly. So it really speeds up prototyping. And it's great for quickly knocking out common algorithms or standard function structures.
I can imagine that'd be amazing for just getting started on something. And maybe for people learning to code, too.
Absolutely. That's another big strength. For beginners, it can act almost like an interactive tutor. It helps with syntax, suggests how code usually looks in that language. The idiomatic patterns shows how to use libraries. It definitely lowers the barrier to entry if you're learning a new language or framework. It makes it less daunting.
And it works across different languages, right? It's not just, say, Python?
Correct. It's very language agnostic. Supports a whole range: Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, Go, Ruby, Java, C#. Lots of them.
Wow.
So developers can use it pretty much whatever project they're working on.
Super versatile. I also heard it can help with documentation, which, let's be honest, is not always a developer's favorite task.
Yeah, you're spot on there. It can help auto-generate things like comments within the code or those summary descriptions for functions called docstrings. And that's genuinely useful for keeping code readable and maintainable, which helps the whole team in the long run.
Okay, so Copilot sounds incredibly powerful. Almost too good to be true sometimes. But it can't be perfect. What are the big limitations? Where does it stumble?
Yeah, it's definitely not magic. There are significant downsides. One major one is it lacks deep contextual understanding.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's great at looking at the code right around where you're typing, but it often struggles to grasp the bigger picture, the overall project architecture, the specific business logic that underlies the whole system.
Ah, okay.
So it might suggest code that looks fine in isolation, but actually breaks something elsewhere or doesn't fit the system's design.
So good at the trees, not necessarily the forest. What about security? That seems like a massive concern if it's just generating code.
It is. It's a huge concern. Copilot has been shown to generate code with security vulnerabilities.
Like what?
Things like hard-coded API keys, just pasting secret passwords right into the code, or classic vulnerabilities like SQL injection. Sometimes it suggests using old, outdated encryption methods.
Oh, wow.
Because it doesn't understand security concepts, it just reproduces patterns it saw, some of which were insecure. So human review is absolutely essential. You cannot just trust its output blindly for security.
That's a really critical point. And what about the legal side? Ethical stuff, since it learned from all that public code.
Yeah, that's a really tricky area the whole industry is wrestling with right now, because it trained on public code,
Yeah.
including open source projects under various licenses.
Right, different licenses have different rules.
Exactly. It can sometimes spit out code that's actually copyrighted or under a restrictive license without giving any credit or attribution,
Yikes.
which is a potential minefield for plagiarism concerns, license compliance, especially if you're building commercial software.
So it could accidentally plagiarize without even realizing it. And what about creativity? Can it actually invent something totally new, a new way of doing things?
That's another major limitation.
No.
It's brilliant at replicating patterns it's seen, finding solutions that already exist in its training data. But it struggles with genuinely creative problem solving. It can't design a truly novel algorithm or invent a completely new software architecture or make those high-level strategic engineering decisions. That requires human insight, intuition that leap beyond the data.
Okay. That makes sense. And that leads perfectly to the other side of this, the human coder. It sounds like the gaps you just described for AI are exactly where humans really excel. What are our sort of irreplaceable cognitive advantages?
Well, that's what's so interesting. Humans bring things to the table that current AI just can't replicate. A key one is abstract thinking.
Okay.
We can design really complex systems from the ground up. We make those high-level architectural choices, weighing the trade-offs or, performance versus cost versus how easy it is to maintain later.
Right, the strategic view.
Exactly. It's strategic planning. We're thinking about the future of the software, how it needs to evolve.
Okay.
AI is mostly pattern matching on what exists now.
So it's that forward-looking architectural piece.
Precisely. And then there's complex problem solving, especially debugging. Think about those really weird nonlinear bugs.
Oh, yeah, the ones that make no sense at first.
Right. The ones caused by subtle interactions between different parts of the system, or weird edge cases nobody thought of, or behavior that isn't even documented anywhere. Finding those takes intuition, critical thinking, experience. AI suggestions often fall flat there, or can even make things worse.
It's about getting to the root why, not just patching a symptom. And you mentioned ethics earlier with Copilot's limitations. Humans handle that.
Absolutely. Ethical reasoning is a uniquely human strength here. Developers are often the ones responsible for making sure software is fair, protects user privacy, it's accessible, meets legal standards like GDPR or IPI. These are conscious decisions based on values, on understanding the impact on real people, on cultural context. AI doesn't have values. It doesn't understand fairness in a human sense.
Right, it doesn't understand the impact. Beyond just the individual coder, though, software is usually built by teams, isn't it? How do humans fit into that collaborative picture?
That's a huge part of it. Software development is rarely done alone. Human developers excel at collaboration and communication. They can take vague business ideas or user requests and translate them into concrete technical plans.
Figuring out what the user really needs, not just what they asked for.
Exactly. That translation skill is crucial. And humans participate in all those team activities, agile processes, pair programming, code reviews, mentoring junior developers. These things build shared understanding, keep everyone aligned, transfer knowledge. AI tools don't participate in a team meeting,
Right.
And then there's emotional intelligence, empathy, resolving conflicts, navigating ambiguous requirements. That's all human stuff essential for a functioning team.
So we're not just typists, we're communicators, collaborators, problem solvers. But okay, let's be fair. Humans aren't perfect either. Where do we fall short? What are our limitations?
Very true. We definitely have limitations. Fatigue is a big one. Manual coding, especially the repetitive parts, is mentally draining. It's slower.
Tell me about it.
And a tired developer is just more likely to make mistakes, right? Syntax errors, missing an edge case, introducing a subtle bug. That's actually where AI assistants can really help by taking over some of that drudgery.
Yeah, handling the grunt work so we don't get so burned out. Like my brain's slowing down late in the day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another limitation is just knowledge gaps. Technology changes so fast. No single person can be an expert in everything, every language, every new framework, every cloud service.
Right. Constant learning curve.
We're always learning, but there will always be things we don't know deeply. AI tools can offer quick access to information, best practices, code snippets for things we're less familiar with. Though again, the human still needs to judge if it's the right solution.
Okay, so this all seems to be pointing towards a future that's not really AI versus human, but more like AI with human. Collaboration seems key.
I think that's exactly right. The most realistic and honestly the most exciting future here is augmentation, not replacement. Tools like Copilot are becoming like an intelligent pair programmer who's always available, helping with the routine stuff, offering suggestions, maybe catching simple mistakes as you type.
So it's like having a really fast, tireless assistant working alongside you.
Yeah, think of it that way. It helps developers stay in that productive flow state. The AI handles the mundane bits boilerplate, basic syntax checks, maybe simple documentation snippets.
Okay.
And that frees up the human developer's time and mental energy to focus on the harder, more creative parts. The overall architecture, the tricky logic, the user experience. It lets us focus on the high-level stuff.
That really does sound like it changes the developer's job description, doesn't it? Less about just writing lines, more about designing and orchestrating.
Absolutely. The role is evolving. As AI gets better at the mechanical parts of coding, human developers will focus more on system architecture, designing how different pieces fit together, ensuring a great user experience, solving those really complex domain-specific business problems.
It's like moving up the value chain, like we've seen in other industries when automation came in.
Exactly. The focus shifts. The skills needed also shift.
So what kind of skills become more important then?
Things like high-level architectural thinking, definitely. Team leadership, strong communication. Ethical judgment becomes even more critical. Understanding the business context deeply. Developers become more like orchestrators of these intelligent systems, guiding the AI, ensuring the final product is right.
This sounds really positive in terms of productivity, but it does raise those tricky socioeconomic questions, right? Like, what about jobs, especially for people just starting out?
That is a really serious concern, and we shouldn't downplay it. There's a definite risk of job displacement, especially for entry-level roles. If AI starts handling a lot of the basic coding tasks that junior developers typically learn on, it could create a skills gap. It might be harder for people to get that foundational experience.
Yeah, that's a real worry. How do you get experience if the entry point changes? The companies must be really pushing for this AI adoption for the efficiency gains.
Oh, absolutely. The drive from businesses is strong. Faster development cycles, lower costs, potentially better code quality. Those are powerful motivators.
Right.
So navigating this is going to be a balancing act. We need, thoughtful leadership from companies, maybe changes in how we educate developers, potentially even some policy discussions about how to integrate AI responsibly without leaving people behind.
It's a complex transition. So bringing this all together then, this whole deep dive. AI versus human coders. Is there a winner?
I think the clear takeaway is that there's no simple winner.
Yeah.
It's not a competition in that sense. AI tools like Copilot are undeniably powerful. They boost efficiency, handle repetition, speed things up significantly. Their strengths are speed, consistency, learning from huge amounts of data.
But as we discussed, they have those crucial gaps.
Exactly. They lack true creativity, that deep understanding of context, the ethical judgment, the ability to really connect with user needs on a human level. That's where humans are still essential.
So the real tower comes from?
From collaboration, from synergy. Not AI or human, but AI and human. When AI acts as that supportive partner, it amplifies what humans can do.
Right.
Developers can then focus their energy on the really challenging, meaningful problems. While the AI handles the routine stuff, it leads to better software, higher productivity, and frankly, probably a more interesting job for the developer.
So the future really belongs to the coders who learn to work with these tools, not against them. Embracing AI, integrating it into the workflow, that seems like the path forward.
I completely agree. It's about working smarter, leveraging the machine's strengths to enhance our own. AI isn't taking human coders obsolete. It's shaping a new era where our creativity and judgment work alongside machine intelligence.
And maybe just to leave you thinking, if AI increasingly handles the how of coding the syntax, the boilerplate, the mechanics, how much more brain power can we as human innovators dedicate to the what's and the why?
That's a great point.
Focusing on the purpose of the software, the real world impact, who it's actually for, those big human questions.
That shift could really change how we approach problem solving, not just in software, but maybe everywhere.
Definitely something to chew on.